After everyone had left one after another, the vast Sword Hall was left with only Changxian and Yuanjian. Yuanjian, disciple brother, I am preparing to go down the mountain tomorrow to meet that senior, said Changxian the immortal. His expression was filled with solemnity. At the same time, there was also a hint of timidity. After all, he was not sure about the temperament of that supreme being. Therefore, it was inevitable that he would feel worried. Elder brother Changxian, are you mentally prepared? Yuanjian the immortal looked at him seriously and said. Changxian the immortal nodded. For the grand plan of our sacred land of metaphysics for tens of thousands of years, this risk must be taken. At this time, Wushuanglu hurriedly entered and said, Greetings, Saint Master. After meeting Wushuanglu, Changxian the immortal's face cleared up a lot. He quickly smiled and said, Wushuang, do you know the temperament of that senior who lives in seclusion in Pond Town? Master, are you getting ready to visit Senior Yi? Wushuanglu blinked her dark eyes, looking a bit hesitant. On the side, Yuanjian the immortal promptly urged, Wushuang, senior brother Changxian is asking you something. Just speak up if you have anything to say. The figure of Wushuanglu immediately appeared in his mind. A tall and elegant figure, gentle and refined. These are the 4 words she used to describe him. Changxian the immortal and Yuanjian the immortal exchanged a glance upon hearing the sound. They couldn't help but shake their heads and chuckle. Wushuang is still young. It seems that the senior has taken a liking to her potential. Naturally, his attitude toward her is good. But I am different. After all, I have lived for thousands of years. The level of adaptability is not what it used to be. Yuanjian the immortal nodded in agreement and hesitated for a moment before continuing. Elder brother Changxian, as the saying goes, a small gift is given in return for a big favor. The gift may be light, but the friendship is profound. So, when you visit that senior this time, be sure to prepare a good gift. Changxian the immortal nodded, and then turned to Wushuanglu saying, I have already prepared the gift. However, for the sake of caution, I plan to bring Wushuang along tomorrow. Having an introduction will surely greatly increase the success rate of the meeting. Brother-disciple indeed thinks things through thoroughly. The next day at noon, Wushuanglu followed Changxian the immortal's orders and arrived promptly at the palace of the Great Profound. Since starting cultivation, Wushuanglu rarely dresses up. However, today she made an effort to dress nicely to meet Senior Yi. She changed into a clean purple long dress, which gave her a different charm, though slightly less ethereal, but pleasant to the eye. Disciple Wushuanglu met Saint Master Changxian the immortal. Changxian the immortal glanced at Wushuanglu and seemed quite pleased with her appearance. At the same time, he changed into a simple long robe, looking like an ordinary old man with grace. Wushuang, remember when you meet that senior, do not call me Saint Master anymore. Just say I am an elder from your family. Wushuanglu nodded understandingly. Later, under the guidance of Changxian the immortal, the two of them successively walked out of the palace of the Great Profound. They turned into 2 rainbow lights and flew towards Pond Town. At the same time, just today, a line of unfamiliar faces appeared in Pond Town. An old man in a black robe with a face as sharp as a knife, accompanied by 4 sturdy middle-aged men, showed up on the east side of Pond Town. Elder Lu. Something strange. Since entering this town, the spirit talisman seems to have lost its effect. Unable to trace the whereabouts of the 9th prince, a square-faced man whispered to the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man furrowed his brows. He looked around. Strange. Last time I passed through this place, the spiritual energy of Pond Town was very thin. But in just a few years, the spiritual energy here not only shows no sign of decline, but instead becomes more rich and pure. What's even more peculiar is that there are faint traces of essence and flow permeating here. Could it be because there is some spiritual treasure hidden underground? Pond Town is indeed a sacred domain of metaphysics. If that's the case, there is a possibility. The square-faced man couldn't help but nod in agreement. The old man in the black robe glanced at him and continued. This town is a sacred domain of the sacred land of metaphysics. It is natural for some restrictions to cause the spirit talisman to be ineffective. Let's do this. Spread out and search around, but remember not to use force. The four middle-aged men glanced at each other, and then dispersed. After they left, the black-robed old man closed his eyes slightly. He carefully sensed and muttered to himself. The essence and flow here seemed to emanate from a certain direction. But for such a small town, is there really any spiritual treasure beneath the underground of the sacred land of metaphysics? After a moment of hesitation and driven by curiosity, he couldn't help but walk towards the direction where the essence and flow were emanating. Unconsciously, he arrived at a street corner. Just at that moment, Wuxuan Lu appeared on the street with Chan Xian the Immortal. Seemingly sensing something, the old man in black suddenly stopped in his tracks. He looked solemnly at Chan Xian the Immortal. They locked eyes, hesitant to speak. Chan Xian the Immortal also seemed to sense something from the old man in black. He asked softly, "Are you perhaps Chanha Lu, the #1 talent of the Great Yin, the Celestial Capital Hall of Exceptional Talents?" Upon hearing this, the old man in black's face changed slightly. He quickly cupped his hands and said, "I did not intend to intrude into the sacred domain of the sacred land of metaphysics." Before he could finish speaking, Immortal Chan Xian snorted and interrupted. "The sacred land of metaphysics and the Great Yin Empire have an agreement. Any royal member who wishes to enter the sacred land of metaphysics must obtain permission. As a member of the Hall of Exceptional Talents, don't you know about this rule?" This cultivator. I am also pursuing it helplessly. Just as Chanha Lu was about to speak, Immortal Chan Xian ruthlessly interrupted again. "Please leave quickly. Otherwise, you know the consequences. This cultivator, the 9th prince of the Great Yin Empire, may be here. We are also here to search for her and bring her back." 9th Prince Wuxuan Lu looked at Chanha Lu with suspicion. "Is the 9th prince you mentioned actually the 9th princess Bingxin Yin of the Great Yin Empire? Not hiding anything from you both. Indeed, 9th princess, your highness is facing 2 individuals from the sacred land of metaphysics. And the cultivation level of one of them is unfathomable. Chanha Lu dares not hold back in any way." However, Chan Xian the Immortal gave a cold snort and indifferently said, "As the 9th princess of the Great Yin Empire, you must surely be more aware of the agreement between the sacred land of metaphysics and the Great Yin Empire. This cultivator, you may have misunderstood." Chanha Lu glanced warily at Chan Xian the Immortal. "In fact, we and the 9th princess were just passing by Qinghe City and staying overnight at an inn nearby. However, the next morning, we found that the 9th princess had suddenly disappeared without a trace. And the 9th princess was carrying a specially made spirit talisman from the Hall of Exceptional Talents, while we were carrying another corresponding spirit talisman. We unintentionally found our way here along the journey. However, upon arriving here, for some unknown reason, the connection between the 2 spirit talismans was suddenly severed as if something had cut it off. That's why we had no choice but to inquire about the whereabouts of the 9th princess." Chan Xian the Immortal stared at Chanha Lu, seeing a sincere expression on his face. Moreover, there was no evasion in his words or any mental fluctuations. It seems that he was telling the truth. Could it be that the senior here has set up some kind of restriction? Thinking of this, he quickly held his breath and concentrated. He slightly sensed his surroundings. Although he felt the directions of many flowing essences, he did not sense any restricting essences. In this way, instead, it made the Saint Master who dominated the world more and more shocked and respectful in his heart. "I can't believe the prohibition arranged by that senior is so extraordinary. It's too terrifying. What kind of existence is this after all?" I was a little distracted for a moment. Chan Xian the Immortal said to Chanha Lu, "This is a sacred domain in my sacred land of metaphysics. The people here are simple and honest. There are also powerful beings who have secluded themselves here. If the 9th princess is really here, she must be staying here willingly instead of being detained. So, please leave with your people promptly. Or, stay on the outskirts upon town." Upon hearing this, Chanha Lu couldn't help but pause, looking like he wanted to say something but held back. To be honest, their entry was indeed impulsive. They shouldn't have intruded here without proper consent. However, if they couldn't find the ninth princess, they wouldn't be able to report back. After some consideration, he could only nod helplessly. In that case, we will station ourselves on the outskirts upon town. Just as Changhalu was about to turn and leave, a slender figure suddenly appeared. It was at the entrance of a nearby grocery store, holding a broom and sweeping the street in front of the store. Ninth Prince Changhalu happened to see this scene and immediately recognized the woman. He was instantly filled with rage. At the same time, he couldn't help but glance at Changxian the Immortal, who had a profound cultivation level. You just said that the people here are simple, and that there is a transcendent master presiding. Shouldn't Ninth Princess be detained here at all? What is going on now? How come my esteemed Ninth Princess, beloved by the Great Yin Empire and the Great Yin Emperor, is now forced to clean the floor for others? Upon hearing Changhalu exclaiming, Changxian the Immortal and Wishhuanglu couldn't help but change their expressions slightly. What's going on? How could the ninth princess of the Great Yin Empire end up in front of that senior's door and still be cleaning the floor? Could it be true that she has been detained here by that senior? But this doesn't make sense. With his cultivation level, he shouldn't be doing this. Could it be some kind of special quirk? Thinking of this, Changxian the Immortal and Wishhuanglu couldn't help but exchange a glance. Then, they both frowned, showing doubtful expressions. Changhalu snorted coldly, took a step, and then walked straight towards the grocery store. The sacred land of metaphysics has inherited for hundreds of thousands of years. Its heritage is truly profound. However, the Great Yin Empire is also an ancient country. In terms of heritage and strength, it is not inferior to the sacred land of metaphysics. Now, the ninth princess has unexpectedly been detained here and forced to do manual labor. The sacred land of metaphysics must give an explanation about this matter. Therefore, Changhalu, who is full of anger, naturally does not have a good expression. At the same time, Changxian the Immortal and Wishhuanglu also walked towards the grocery store entrance with a perplexed expression. Your Highness, it's all my fault for neglecting my duties and causing you suffering. Changhalu hurriedly arrived at the entrance of the grocery store and bowed deeply to the graceful figure. Upon hearing the sound, Bingxin Yan's delicate body trembled slightly. She abruptly turned her head to look at Changhalu and asked, "What are you doing here?" After recognizing Changhalu, her pretty face showed no trace of joy, but instead revealed a hint of displeasure. And as she spoke, she glanced cautiously towards the grocery store. "Your Highness, I have come to take you away from here." Changhalu looked up at Bingxin Yan, with a hint of killing intent in his eyes. "He dared to imprison you here. I will definitely smash him into 1,000 pieces." "Shut up." Before he could finish his sentence, Bingxin Yan quickly interrupted. "Elder Lu, do you know who lives here? How dare you speak so arrogantly here? Do you want to ruin the fate of the Great Yin Empire that has lasted for tens of thousands of years and bring enormous disaster upon us?" "What do you mean, Your Highness?" Hearing this, Changhalu couldn't help but be confused. And seeing Bingxin Yan's serious expression, it doesn't seem like a joke at all. Thinking about this, he couldn't help but glance at the grocery store. His face changed drastically in an instant. His expression was filled with shock and horror, because he discovered that the essence and flow permeating the entire Pawn Town actually originated from this grocery store. Could it be related to the owner of this grocery store? You have such bold confidence. Just as Changhalu was feeling mixed emotions, Changxian the Immortal suddenly interjected. "Do you know what kind of existence the owner of this grocery store is? It's quite laughable how you're boasting here." Upon hearing this, Changhalu suddenly took a sharp breath and the murderous intent on his face dissipated instantly. He then turned to look at Changxian the Immortal behind him. That even this enigmatic cultivator feared. Could the owner of this shop be the so-called transcendent sage living in seclusion, as he mentioned? At this time, Bingxin Yan looked at Changxian the Immortal and Wishhuanglu and said, "So you both know Mr. Yi as well?" "Mr. Yi?" Chan Xian the Immortal and Wu Shuanglu immediately looked at each other with suspicion. Could it be that this ninth princess is already a student of that senior? Such a great fortuitous encounter, and good fortune. It's truly enviable. Just thinking about it. Chan Xian the Immortal's face warmed up. Showing a gentle smile, he asked, I wonder if Mr. Yi is at home. Bing Xinyan replied, He is at home, he is at home. But he is currently painting. Meeting transcendent master painting on the first visit might be a stroke of great fortune. If one can have the honor to appreciate it, it may turn out to be a huge stroke of luck. Thinking about this, Chan Xian the Immortal felt inexplicably excited and energized. So, he smiled at Ninth Princess, who was sweeping the floor, and said, I am here to visit Mr. Yi. I wonder if he is available now. Bing Xinyan quickly assessed the elderly man in front of her, who looked like a refined immortal. After a brief hesitation, she shook her head and said, Mr. Yi is currently painting. You should wait a bit. Let me finish sweeping here first. You can go in later. Sounds good. Chan Xian the Immortal smiled and nodded. As the Saint Master of the sacred land of metaphysics, his accomplishments reflected the laws of nature in the most revered way. However, in the face of the Supreme Being residing here, he deeply realized his insignificance. Therefore, he dared not be presumptuous or show any disrespect. Just as his words fell, a young man in a green robe walked out slowly from the grocery store. The youth had a handsome and calm demeanor, with eyes that exuded tranquility, giving people a feeling as if basking in the spring breeze. At the same time, a big black dog also rushed out with a fierce and imposing appearance. But when it sensed a trace of terrifying aura from Chan Xian the Immortal, its neck suddenly shrank back, retreating continuously, while also emitting a low growl. Oh my, the cultivation level of this old guy is so terrifying. However, when it turned its head to glance at Chan Qingyi, it immediately seemed to have found a pillar of support. It sneered at Chan Xian the Immortal, as if feeling emboldened. At this moment, Shadow Monarch portrayed the dynamic of relying on the strong with great skill. At the same time, considering the cultivation levels of Chan Xian the Immortal and Changhe Lu. Naturally, one can easily sense the essence on the Shadow Monarch's body. For a moment, the two couldn't help but change their expression. This is no ordinary black dog. It is clearly a powerful monster king. Although its body seems to have suffered some kind of injury, it is indeed a genuine monster king. It's just a bit puzzling. Shouldn't a monster king have a strong presence of demonic essence? However, the demonic essence on this monster king is extremely faint. Also, what is the background of the young man in front of him? To actually keep a monster king level existence at home. Changhe Lu was completely dumbfounded. Moreover, with his golden infant stage cultivation level, he couldn't detect any essence of cultivation on the young man. Could it truly be some kind of immortal old-timer who has hidden here? Thinking about this, Changhe Lu couldn't help but glance at Chan Xian the Immortal. And then, considering the tone of his speech just now, he understood. He finally understood. The seemingly kind young man in front of him is actually a supreme being whose accomplishments reflect the laws of nature. In an instant, a chill rose from the soles of Changhe Lu's feet to his crown. You see, just now, when he saw the ninth princess sweeping the floor, he even had murderous intent. If it weren't for the princess stopping him in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Senior Yi. Upon seeing Chan Qingyi, Wu Shuanglu's spirits immediately lifted. Hastily approached and respectfully saluted. Chan Qingyi was momentarily stunned. He cast a brief glance behind Wu Shuanglu's back at Chan Xian the Immortal and Changhe Lu, then subtly furrowed his brow. She actually came. But what's the meaning of bringing along these two old men this time? Are they also calligraphy enthusiasts? However, no matter what, he couldn't agree to the 3 copper coins this time. Long time no see. Due to the other party's status, Chan Qingyi merely gestured with a cupped hand as a formality. May I ask, Celestial Maiden, who are these two? Wu Shuanglu turned her head and glanced at Chan Xian the Immortal, introducing. This is an elder in my family who shares my passion for calligraphy and painting. That's why they came to visit. Upon hearing this, Chan Xian the Immortal immediately stepped forward, cupping his hands in greeting, and said, I, the poor Taoist, he Chan Xian, have met Mr. Yi. Chan Qingyi looked at Chan Xian the Immortal with a scrutinizing gaze, then smiled and nodded gently. Not bad, not bad. A dignified and noble appearance, like a true immortal. He does look like a master in painting and calligraphy. However, when he shifted his gaze to Chang Lu, the latter's face immediately turned pale, and cold sweat kept pouring down from his forehead. He never expected this old man to catch a cold wind and still come specially. It seems like he really cares. It appears that he is extremely obsessed with painting and calligraphy. Thinking of this, Chan Qingyi couldn't help but feel a little relieved. Following Chan Qingyi's gaze, Wu Shuanglu glanced at Chang Lu and continued, Senior Yi, who is this? Before she could finish her sentence, Bingxin Yan directly interrupted. Mr. Yi, he is a senior in my family. He has come today to see me. Is it true? When Chan Qingyi heard that Chang Lu is a senior in Bingxin Yan's family, a hint of joy flashed through his eyes inadvertently. Haha, finally going to be free. You should know, Bingxin Yan stays here. Apart from sweeping the floor, she neither washes clothes nor cooks. But when it comes to eating, she really enjoys it. These days, because of her presence, there were a few nights when Chan Qingyi couldn't sleep because of hunger. Due to the fact that the other party is a weak woman, and the outside upon town is full of danger, he also cannot bear to drive her away. It's all good now. Finally, someone came to my house. It means that Bingxin Yan can finally leave. I see. Chan Qingyi nodded with a smile. Then he invited, Since we are all here, let's go inside for a cup of tea. After speaking, he turned and walked towards the courtyard. Chan Xian the Immortal and Wu Shuanglu followed closely behind. However, when Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Lu, two powerful experts with extremely high cultivation level, stepped into the courtyard, they were instantly stunned by the layout inside. Oh my, is this Senior Ye's dojo? Looked up. The willow tree in the center of the courtyard. It is about 5 meters tall with thousands of emerald green branches hanging down. At first glance, it may not seem outstanding, but it exudes a subtle essence of life and mysterious poetic charm. They both carefully sensed it. The willow tree seemed to have already sprouted a spiritual awareness, and was subtly assessing the two of them. It is known that according to ancient records, old trees, with such a close resemblance to demons, like this one usually only appear in ancient lands that have existed for tens of thousands of years. And in such ancient lands, despite the extraordinary stroke of luck and great fortune, there are also many terrifying crises. Even transcendent experts at the divine transcendence stage may be at risk when entering such forbidden grounds, and may even end up falling there. Nowadays, such a legendary demon tree unexpectedly grows in this small courtyard. Perhaps only a supreme being like Senior Yi would have such a grand gesture. Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Lu exchanged glances, feeling impressed at the same time. Following that, their gazes shifted towards the bottom of the willow tree. A guqin placed on a small wooden table caught their attention. The guqin was intricately engraved with exquisite patterns, appearing to be an integral piece as if formed by nature itself, exuding an ancient and vast essence. With a little sensing, it was not difficult to discover the lingering essence of the way of melody on it. Indeed, the Supreme Being? There are unexpectedly spiraling wisps on the guqin. Such a refined way of melody. It's simply unimaginable. Chan Xian the Immortal couldn't help but feel emotional. I used to mistakenly think that this senior was a strong individual who cultivates the path of the sword to the supreme stage. It seems that I've been short-sighted. Just as he was contemplating in secret, his gaze inadvertently shifted to the side and landed on a chessboard on the stone table. Great. Senior Yi does have quite a good understanding of chess. Cha Xian the Immortal's face immediately lit up with joy. Then, he hurriedly walked to the stone table. On the side, Chang Lu saw his strange expression and couldn't help but follow along. As a result, when the two of them just stared at the chess game for a moment, his expression was full of all kinds of horror. Especially Chang Lu. I saw his face turn pale. Veins bulged on his forehead. He couldn't stop sweating profusely all over his body. Chan Xian the Immortal couldn't help but take a cold breath. At the same time, he was secretly delighted. Senior Yi is not just knowledgeable about the way of Weiqi. He is probably at the peak of mastery in the way of Weiqi. After seeing Senior Yi's game, Qing Tian Su's for dragon spitting water move is simply a joke. At this moment, Cheng Lu finally withdrew his mind and spirit from the game. His pale face was filled with horror. He didn't expect to encounter such a brilliant game in the world. It may seem like a confrontation between black and white pieces, but within it lies the hidden principles of the way of yin and yang, and the way of killing and the way of life. Thinking of this, he and Chan Xian the Immortal looked at each other again. Both of their expressions were filled with sincere admiration and reverence. At the same time, Wu Xuanlu and Bingxin Yin had a knowing smile on their faces, their eyes fixed on Chan Qingye's new painting, the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. A few days ago, Chan Qingye stumbled upon a painting he did several years ago, the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. While tidying up his shop, he noticed some shortcomings in a few places and felt that it lacked a bit of artistic conception. Therefore, he decided to repaint the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. This morning, he spent nearly a traditional time to complete it. Sure enough, after making adjustments to several lacking areas, the overall artistic conception of the painting immediately elevated by several levels. Chan Qingye is very satisfied with this new painting. He feels that this painting is the best one he has created since he arrived in this cultivate immortality world. Both in terms of artistic conception and the use of light and heavy strokes, it can be regarded as perfect. It seems that these two beauties are better than those two. The old guy has good taste. He was immediately captivated by my new work. Chang Qingye, who was sitting aside pouring tea, glanced at Bingxin Yin and Wu Xuanlu. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. But when he saw Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Lu, he couldn't help but furrow his brow. What's wrong with these two old men? How come they arrived at this small courtyard looking like country bumpkins coming to the city for the first time? They seem amazed by everything they see. However, out of respect for their identities, he did not show any dissatisfaction. Wu Xuanlu is a disciple of the sacred land of metaphysics and has an impressive status. Then her family behind her is also extraordinary. As for Bingxin Yin, although I don't know what her identity is in the end, but judging from her temperament, she is also not from an ordinary family. Therefore, the old man who came to pick her up naturally is not a kind person. Everyone, come over and have a cup of tea. Chan Qingye smiled warmly and extended a cordial invitation. Upon hearing this, Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Lu suddenly came to their senses. The two of them dared not be the slightest bit slow and quickly walked over. Thank you, Mr. Yi, for your trouble. You're welcome. Please have a seat. Chan Qingye smiled and nodded. Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Lu hesitated for a moment, then sat down cautiously. They both knew a common truth. The more they faced important and distinguished figures, the less they should appear too constrained. Otherwise, it was easy to provoke dissatisfaction from the other party, especially before the Supreme Being, whose accomplishments reflect the laws of nature. The moment they sat down, they saw Chan Qingye taking out a few green tea leaves from a sealed ceramic jar. Both of them were dumbfounded instantly, only to see those leaves swirling with the essence of the Tao to the extreme. Faintly radiating waves of clear light, they looked extraordinarily remarkable. Just a gentle sniff is enough to make one feel completely comfortable. The heart is open and the spirit is joyful, as if experiencing transcendence and ascension. Is this the legendary enlightenment tea really, Senior Yi? This life is luxurious, truly too luxurious. What do these two old men mean? Do they think there is something wrong with the tea leaves? Seeing the strange expressions on the faces of Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Lu, Chan Qingyi couldn't help but have such a question. After a moment of hesitation, he quickly understood. These two old men have distinguished identities. The tea they usually drink must also be the most exquisite of the exquisite. As for his tea leaves, they were just picked from a wild tea tree he transplanted casually. It is estimated that it is for this reason that those two old men found fault with it. Thinking of this, Chan Qingyi looked slightly embarrassed. Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Halu smiled and said, "It seems like the two of you don't really enjoy drinking tea." "Don't like? What joke? This is the legendary enlightenment tea. Throughout the ancient and modern times, only someone like you is unparalleled. Only a person with such great vision will have such a large achievement." Upon hearing this, Chan Xian the Immortal was momentarily stunned. Then he quickly waved his hand. "Mr. Yi, you have misunderstood. This kind of tea is something I have never encountered before. I just want to experience its unique aroma first." By his side, Cheng Halu also had a smile on his face, nodding gently. "So you've never tried this tea before? Take your time to savor it." Chan Qingyi felt relieved only then, and then calmly continued to pour the tea. He skillfully poured hot water into the teapot. He rinsed the teacup with the hot tea water first, then casually poured it out. Seeing this scene, Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Halu only felt their hearts dripping blood. This is water brewed with enlightenment tea. Although it is just the first tea brewing, it is definitely comparable to the exquisite elixir. But Senior Yi unexpectedly poured it out without any hesitation. Extravagant. It's simply too extravagant. At this moment, Chan Qingyi poured tea into 2 cups separately. Then he pushed them in front of Chan Xian the Immortal and Chang Halu. "Now, both of you can have a taste." The two men glanced at each other. Then, they smiled dryly and nodded at Chan Qingyi. With trembling hands, they picked up the teacups. They gently blew on the hot tea, sipped it slowly. Just as the tea warmed their bodies, the essence of spirit within their meridians and veins immediately began to circulate involuntarily. Their whole bodies felt extremely comfortable, their minds clear and transparent. It felt like they had transcended and ascended. This feeling was truly wonderful. At the same time, whether it was Cha Xian the Immortal or Chang Halu, they both sensed in the vast emptiness that without a transcendent master by their side, they would never have restrained themselves from breaking through on the spot with the profound principles and Tao principles they had cultivated. Chan Qingyi on the side couldn't help but show a skeptical look. "It's just a cup of tea. Is it necessary to show such a satisfied expression?" At this moment, he started to feel a bit impatient with these two old guys. He then turned his head to look at Wushuang Lu and Bingxin Yan and smiled. "You two don't stand there either. Come over and have a cup of tea." Upon hearing, Wushuang Lu and Bingxin Yan finally emerged from the painting. The expressions of both were filled with awe. "Celestial Maiden, what do you think of my new creation, the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity, based on this old painting?" Chan Qingyi poured 2 cups of tea and handed them to the two. At the same time, he casually asked. Of course, he mainly wanted to inquire about Wushuang Lu's opinion. As for Bingxin Yan, through these days of interaction, he has deeply understood what it means to be all beauty and no brains. Apart from cleaning, this woman seems to know everything but is actually incompetent at everything. She can't even be taught. Therefore, Chan Qingyi's evaluation of Bingxin Yan is that her intelligence is completely disproportionate to her looks. If her family doesn't watch over her carefully, she might end up being sold and still have to help others count money. Mountains are not mountains, waters are not waters. Wushuang Lu lightly sipped her tea, hesitating on how to evaluate. But it was Bingxin Yan who spoke up directly. Upon hearing this, Chan Qingyi was indeed stunned, then showed a look of surprise. He had just mentioned that this woman's intelligence and looks were not proportional, but she then came out with such a sentence. However, this statement did hit the mark. Whether it's calligraphy or landscape painting, it is through the layout that a deep artistic conception is formed. The mountains are not just mountains. The water is not just water. This statement can be described as hitting the nail on the head. It seems that during this period of time, Miss Yin has made great progress in her understanding of painting and calligraphy, hasn't she? At this moment, Wushuanglu asked quietly, Senior Yi, have you ever been to Mount Taishian? Mount Taishian. Hearing this, Chan Qingyi couldn't help feeling a surge of bitterness in his heart. When he was detected to have no spiritual root, he felt unwilling to accept it. So, he once took a risk and walked around the vicinity of Mount Taishian out of resentment. Not long after returning, he painted the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. So, to put it this way, this painting is his way of seeking solace and also a sense of helplessness. So he pondered for a moment and chuckled lightly. 5 years ago, I passed by Mount Taishian. That's why I had the inspiration for the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. So that's how it is. Wushuanglu was stunned for a moment. A hint of disappointment flickered in his eyes. If only I had met Senior Yi earlier, that would have been great. At this moment, Changxian the Immortal and Chenghe Lu also opened their eyes successively. Both old faces were filled with expressions of joy. But when they saw Wushuanglu and Bingxinyan also drinking tea, they couldn't help but exchange a glance. It was indeed Senior Yi. Whether towards the 2 old men or the 2 young men, he treated them all equally. This is enlightenment tea. It was casually given to the 2 juniors. For them, this is definitely a huge stroke of luck and good fortune. How is the tea that I made for you two? Chang Qingyi asked with a smile as refreshing as a spring breeze, suddenly speaking up. What does Senior Yi mean by that? Could it be a test of our cultivation aptitude? Chan Xian the Immortal quickly realized this. He paused for a moment, carefully choosing his words before speaking solemnly. The tea was sweet and lingering, almost like soaking in a warm spring, making one feel relaxed and joyful. It seemed as if his state of mind had undergone a subtle transformation, truly extraordinary. Oh my goodness! Isn't it just drinking a cup of tea? To have so many feelings from just a cup of tea. Could it be some kind of flattery going on here? Chan Qingyi glanced at Chan Xian the Immortal with a serious expression, then awkwardly nodded with a smile. But when he looked at Chenghe Lu, the latter's face changed slightly, appearing somewhat awkward. Reporting to Mr. Yi, this is absolutely the best tea I have ever had in my life, he said. Chenghe Lu is very attentive to the art of speech. He first flattered a bit, then solemnly said, This tea not only refreshes the mind and clarifies the thoughts, but also purifies the soul as if undergoing a baptism. It's simply miraculous. Upon hearing this, Chan Qingyi couldn't help but glance at Chenghe Lu a few more times. He discreetly looked at Chan Xian the Immortal. These 2 old guys wouldn't be playing tricks on him, would they? Yes, it must be the case. To be played around by these 2 old guys. Today, he must find a way to gain back his reputation. At this moment, Chenghe Lu took out a quaint brocade box from his pocket. Mr. Yi, a small gift. I hope you will accept it. Senior Lu, what do you mean by this? Chan Qingyi was about to invite these 2 old guys to play chess, and planned to thoroughly defeat them on the chessboard. But seeing their expressions, it seemed like they were preparing to give gifts instead. However, upon seeing the ancient and exquisite brocade box, much of the frustration in his heart dissipated. Perhaps the other party was simply speaking the truth earlier. But what kind of gift would they give in return? After all, Bingxinyan had been freeloading off him for several days. At that moment, Chan Qingyi's heart was filled with curiosity. In this brocade box is a mysterious ice pearl. Just a small token of sincerity. I hope Mr. Yi won't refuse it. Chenghe Lu replied with a smile. Mysterious ice pearl. Chan Qingyi hesitated for a moment. Then he took the brocade box and slowly opened it. A wave of icy essence hit his face. Shortly after, he saw a snow-white pearl surrounded by a chilling aura. A bead the size of a baby's fist came into view. Chan Xian the Immortal and Wushuanglu beside him both had their pupils contract upon seeing this scene. Astonishment was written all over their faces. As the name suggests, mysterious ice is a treasure that comes from extremely cold places formed over tens of thousands of years. As the saying goes, extreme things must reverse. Although mysterious ice has extremely cold properties, it is a rare healing treasure in the world. Especially for cultivators with an ice attribute spiritual root, this is equivalent to a heaven-defying good fortune and fortuitous encounter. Of course, the sacred land of metaphysics also has such treasures. However, what Quan Xian the Immortal and Wushuang Lu did not expect was that the mysterious ice given to Quan Qingyi by Chenghe Lu was actually a bead. You should know that even mysterious ice the size of a fingernail is considered priceless. So, what kind of existence would a mysterious ice pearl the size of a fist be? Now it seems that the heritage of the ancient Great Yin country may not be much inferior to the sacred land of metaphysics. It might even surpass it in some aspects. Looking at this pearl in front of him, Quan Xian the Immortal couldn't help but sigh inwardly. At the same time, Quan Qingyi curiously took out the mysterious ice pearl from the brocade box and held it in his hand. Oh my, it's so refreshingly cold. This pearl emits a chill all over. If it were placed in the summer, it could be used to chill some fruits or something. The four people beside him were surprised to see him holding the mysterious ice pearl in his hand, but he still maintained a calm demeanor. They all showed expressions of astonishment. The mysterious ice pearl comes from an extremely cold place, and naturally belongs to the category of extremely keen and cold treasures. An ordinary mortal would probably turn into a frozen corpse in an instant with just one touch of the mysterious ice pearl. Even someone like Quan Xian the Immortal, who is a strong cultivator with accomplishments reflecting the laws of nature, wouldn't dare to keep it in their palm for too long. You should know that once the extremely keen and cold aura contained in the mysterious ice pearl enters the human body, it would be nothing short of a disaster for cultivators without an ice attribute spiritual root. Even strong cultivators at the divine transcendence stage would absolutely not dare to underestimate it. At that moment, everyone looked at Quan Qingyi with admiration in their eyes. Senior Yi is indeed a transcendent being with unfathomable accomplishments reflecting the laws of nature in his cultivation level. Seeing his great interest in the mysterious ice pearl, Chenghe Lu glanced at Bingxin Yin and chuckled softly. Senior Yi, my daughter has been causing you trouble these days. Today, I will take her away from here. Are you leaving now? Quan Qingyi raised his head abruptly, showing reluctance. Although he had wanted Bingxin Yin to leave a long time ago, now that her family had come to pick her up and even gave him such a useful ice pearl, he still had to show a somewhat regretful appearance. Ah, Miss Yin, I didn't expect us to part ways so soon. Seeing this scene, not only did Bingxin Yin, who originally didn't want to leave, suddenly feel stunned. Even Quan Xian the Immortal and Wushuang Lu couldn't help but look stunned. What exactly is special about this ninth princess that she can earn such appreciation from Senior Yi? Mr. Yi, I'm not leaving. Bingxin Yin hesitated for a moment, then turned to look at Chenghe Lu and said, Elder Lu, you go back and tell my parents. Let them not worry. I will stay here with Mr. Yi for a while. I will inform them separately when I want to go back. Upon hearing this, Quan Qingyi couldn't help but be stunned. A complex expression immediately appeared on his face. He never expected that by merely being polite to Chenghe Lu, this woman would take it seriously. Your world. Don't you pay any attention to the differences between men and women at all? And aren't you afraid that on a dark and stormy night, he might not be able to control his loneliness and accidentally get into some trouble? Hearing Bingxin Yin say this, and looking very serious, Chenghe Lu suddenly seemed a bit hesitant. Quan Qingyi couldn't help but blink at the sight. Are the hearts of you elders so big? At this moment, he was filled with regret. If he could choose again, he would never be so affected. So he hesitated for a moment, forced a smile, and looked at Bingxin Yin, saying, Miss Yin, as the saying goes, filial piety is the most important in all things. If you truly enjoy staying with me, first go back and spend some time with your parents. Come back in a while. Hearing this, Quan Xian the Immortal couldn't help but show a hint of complex expression on his face. He then nodded in agreement. At my age, my parents have long turned into a pile of yellow soil. You all are still young. Indeed, You should cherish this family bond. Chung Lu also nodded in agreement. That's right. Life is short, a mere 100 years. We should cherish all the people and things in front of us. At this moment, Chan Qingyi sighed slightly as he began reciting a poem. Daylilies bloom beside the hall steps, while the wanderer roams the vast expanse. A tender mother leans against the door, yet the daylilies blossom eludes her glance. Being well versed in Tang poetry and song lyrics, his thoughts shifted, casually reciting this poem. The Wanderer's Poem. Upon hearing this, Changxian the Immortal and the other three people were stunned, as if a vivid image had instantly appeared in their minds. The moss covered the steps. Traveling children walked all over the world. An old mother with gray hair leaned against the door, gazing steadily into the distance, yet the returning children were nowhere to be seen. For people's eyes turned red inadvertently. Their faces were filled with complex emotions, especially Changxian the Immortal and Chung Lu, who have cultivated for thousands of years. Their dull hearts are as steady as a rock, but this poem unintentionally stirred up memories long buried in the depths of their hearts. They were once sons as well. They also had a white-haired old mother. But now, over the span of 1,000 years, this poem evoked memories that made them empathize deeply. It brought forth a sense of helplessness and longing for their old mother. Senior Yi is indeed the supreme being of accomplishments reflect the laws of nature. His words turn into poetry effortlessly, with such profound implications. It is feared that those old folks in Zhongzhou who claim to be descendants of the literary sage can only look on and sigh in admiration. Seeing the sorrowful expressions on the faces of the two elderly men, Chan Qingyi couldn't help but feel a bit puzzled. Could it be that the 5-character poem he casually uttered happened to touch their sore spots? Yes. Soon, Chung Lu reigned in his mind and spirit. After some internal struggle, he stood up resolutely and spoke. Mr. Yi, we have troubled you today. I will now take Miss away from here. Are you really leaving? Bing Xinyan looked reluctant to part. However, after hearing Chan Qingyi's 5-character poem, she decided to go back first. Mr. Yi, I will accompany Elder Lu home first. I will come back to see you in a while. Seeing that Bing Xinyan had made up her mind, Chan Qingyi felt a hint of complexity in his heart. If possible, he really wanted to go out to the outside world. It has been 5 years since coming to this world. His largest activity range is Pond Town. The farthest place he has visited is at the foot of Mount Taishan. He couldn't possibly stay and grow old in this small place the size of a palm for his whole life. I'll go and see them off. Chan Qingyi nodded helplessly. Then he looked at Changxian the Immortal and Wushuang Lu. If you two are not in a hurry, please wait here for a moment. Changxian the Immortal and Wushuang Lu were stunned for a moment. They nodded gently. They never expected that Senior Yi would be so elegant and easygoing, willingly seeing off 2 juniors despite having ascended to the supreme stage. After Chan Qingyi and the other 2 left, the bored Changxian the Immortal approached the table. Finally, he saw the new version of the old painting, the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. In an instant, his mind and spirit were drawn into the illusion. The surroundings changed dramatically, with towering mountains, ancient forests, and a realm reminiscent of the world of immortals. It was a scene that captivated the heart and soul. Deep within the cloud-shrouded mountains, ancient temples could be vaguely seen. It was the location of the main peak, the palace of the Great Profound. However, what truly amazed Changxian the Immortal was the vast expanse of colorful auspicious clouds that shrouded above palace of the Great Profound and many other ancient temples. They emitted a majestic essence that was awe-inspiring. Previously, with the perspective of Wushuang Lu and Bing Xinyan, it was impossible to discern the significance of these colorful auspicious clouds. However, with the vision of Changxian the Immortal, a saint master in the sacred land of metaphysics, how could one not understand? This clearly is an omen of fortune bestowed from above. Heavens! Senior Yi is like a painter using the heavens and earth as canvas, employing myriad Tao principles as brushstrokes, bestowing countless fortunes upon the sacred land of metaphysics through extraordinary means. No wonder so many geniuses in cultivation have been recruited recently. Moreover, the first chair of Sword Spirit Peak has advanced ahead of schedule, stepping into the divine transcendence stage hundreds of years earlier. If nothing unexpected happens, the sacred land of metaphysics will surely welcome even more surprises. There is even hope that oneself in this lifetime may rise to the celestial realm. Saint Master, what's wrong with you? Wushuanglu saw Chan Xian the immortal looking strange, couldn't help but furrow her delicate eyebrows in slight concern. Hearing this, Chan Xian the immortal suddenly realized. He pulled out the mind and spirit from the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. He couldn't help but gasp in cold air first. Then he showed great joy on his face, and said word by word to Wushuanglu. Confirmed. Mr. Yi is indeed the esteemed Grandmaster. Seeing the unprecedented seriousness on Saint Master's face, and so sure, Wushuanglu couldn't help but look stunned. Really? Are you sure Senior Yi is the one, the esteemed Grandmaster? No mistake. It must be him. Chan Xian the immortal spoke with a firm gaze. Wushuang, if I'm not mistaken, your mind and spirit were also drawn into the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity just now, right? Wushuanglu nodded uncontrollably. Have you seen the colorful auspicious clouds in the depths of Mount Taishian? Replying to Saint Master, Wushuang saw it. Does that colorful auspicious cloud have any special meaning? You are still young, so your perspective is naturally a bit shallow. That colorful auspicious cloud is a great fortuitous encounter bestowed by Senior Yi upon our sacred land of metaphysics. Saint Master, Wushuang still doesn't understand. It's better not to understand. Because that colorful auspicious cloud is a gift from Senior Yi to our sacred land of metaphysics. Fortune is a very mysterious existence. It's something I have only seen once in my life. Senior Yi uses the heavens and the earth as the canvas, and the myriad Tao principles as the ink brush, then bestows us with incomparable divine abilities. The sacred land of metaphysics is endowed with countless fortunes of such grandeur. I'm afraid that throughout history, no one could achieve this. And this painting is named the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. All signs indicate that Senior Yi is our sacred land of metaphysics. He is the revered Grandmaster who has been worshipped for countless years. At this point, Chan Xian the immortal appears radiant, his cheeks full of excitement. With the support of such an esteemed Grandmaster working behind the scenes, the sacred land of metaphysics will have no trouble soaring. In this way, the sacred land of metaphysics will usher in an unprecedented golden age and become the foremost holy land of cultivation in the entire Zhongzhou continent. Although Wushuanglu found it a bit unclear, Chan Xian the immortal holds a prestigious status and possesses an unfathomable cultivation level as a Saint Master. As a junior, she naturally dare not harbor suspicions. Of course, the most important reason is that Senior Yi appears gentle and amiable, despite his profound and immeasurable cultivation level. If he truly is connected to their own esteemed Grandmaster, she would naturally be pleased. But the next moment, as if she had figured something out, her expression changed slightly, and she asked seriously, Saint Master, I have a question. Do you think Senior Yi could truly be a being who has transcended to the celestial heights? Upon hearing this, Chan Xian the immortal nodded without hesitation. It's not a possibility, but a certainty. The ability to casually bestow countless fortunes upon our sacred land of metaphysics is too extraordinary. And once the backlash occurs, it will surely bring about numerous calamities. Perhaps only a being of that level could disregard such consequences. Therefore, Senior Yi can only be a supreme being of that caliber. Wushuanglu nodded slightly. However, Saint Master, I have heard before that some transcendent beings, in order to achieve their own goals, will mercilessly use sentient beings as pawns. Do you think Senior Yi might also be like that? Wushuang, I have thought about this question a long time ago. And it's great that you can think this far. Chan Xian the immortal nodded with relief, then smiled and said, But now it has been confirmed that Senior Yi is indeed our esteemed Grandmaster of the sacred land of metaphysics. Even if he truly becomes a pawn of Grandmaster Yi, it would definitely be beneficial to us without any harm. On the contrary, If the esteemed Grandmaster is really confronting a transcendent being, but not using our sacred land of metaphysics as a pawn, it's my fault instead. Speaking of this, Changxian the Immortal couldn't help but sigh softly. Wushuang, remember this. We, and ye the esteemed Grandmaster, are always a unity. We rise and fall together. So even if used as a pawn, there should be no complaints. Saint Master. Wushuang noted it down. Wushuang Lu smiled gently, nodding deeply in agreement. On the other side, Chang Qingyi personally escorted Bingxin Yin and her group to the outskirts of Pond Town. When he saw the tall and imposing guards assembled outside, he really felt the urge to leave Pond Town. With such a group of imposing guards protecting them, even if they encountered any danger, it could be easily resolved. He really wanted to go out into the world, to explore and see. Especially hearing about the great Yin Kingdom and the celestial capital from Bingxin Yin filled him with longing. Mr. Yi personally bid farewell, leaving me feeling both honored and nervous. Before departing, Changhe Lu once again bowed deeply, his words filled with respect. Chang Qingyi, on the other hand, wore a peaceful smile. Senior Lu's words were solemn. If you have time in the future, you are welcome to visit me again for a chat at my humble abode. Okay. Changhe Lu was momentarily stunned. A faint smile of embarrassment appeared on his face. Thank you, Mr. Yi, for your kindness. Changhe Lu will definitely come visit again. Chang Qingyi nodded slightly, watching the group walk away slowly. Then he withdrew his gaze and glanced at the Shadow Monarch squatting beside him. He couldn't help but sigh heavily. Unexpectedly, after a year, you are still so useless. With that, he turned and left. Shadow Monarch was crouching on the ground, turned his head to look at the slim figure of Chang Qingyi. His eyes were filled with determination. Master, I, Shadow Monarch, swear that I will work hard to cultivate. I will never disappoint your expectations. After a moment, when Chang Qingyi returned to the courtyard, Changxian the Immortal and Wushuang Lu, who were standing at the table, finally came back to their senses. They quickly said, Mr. Yi, you're back. At this moment, Chang Qingyi felt a little depressed. So he asked the two of them, Senior Yi, Miss Lu, do you two drink alcohol? Wushuang Lu looked stunned for a moment, and then shyly shook her head. Changxian the Immortal's eyes lit up with a glimmer. With a thought, he took out a jug of fine wine from his sleeve and said with a smile, Mr. Yi, this wine is called Snow Spirit Brew. True to its name, it is brewed from the rare snow spirit flower found only in the 10,000-year snow mountain. It's ice cold on the palate and perfect for this season. Oh, really? Chang Qingyi lightly exclaimed, a hint of joy flashing in his eyes. He had thought that this old guy would be very stingy, but he didn't expect him to take out such good wine. I must have a few more drinks today. Senior He and Miss Lu, please wait a moment. I'll go prepare some dishes to go with the wine. I'll be right back. With that, he turned and headed towards the kitchen. Master, is this the 1,000-year-old snow spirit brew that Master often mentions? When Chang Qingyi went to the kitchen, Wushuang Lu looked at the wine jug in front of him, his face revealing a hint of doubt. Yes. This wine is indeed the snow spirit brew that Yuanjian disciple brother has been longing for. Changxian the Immortal glanced at Wushuang Lu and chuckled. However, ordinary people cannot handle this snow spirit brew. Even with my current level of cultivation, I can only have up to 3 cups at most. Having more than 1 cup might even make me drunk. Is it really that powerful? Hearing this, Wushuang Lu's eyes lit up. Saint Master, may I have a taste later? Changxian the Immortal nodded with a smile. Although this wine is good, do not indulge too much. After about half an incense stick's time, Chang Qingyi walked over with 2 plates of pork. One plate was spicy pig liver, and the other plate was smoked wild boar slices. Of course, all of these came from the wild game that suddenly appeared in the grocery store that day. Senior He and Miss Lu, please try my specially made appetizers. He greeted them warmly with a smile on his face. However, when Changxian the Immortal sensed the faint special essence emanating from the pork, his pupils contracted involuntarily, and a strange expression appeared on his face. Whether it is the essence on the pig liver or the slices of meat. Clearly it is a trace of demonic essence. And this demonic essence is so pure. Definitely from a top-tier powerful monster. That is equivalent to the level of the golden elixir stage. And at this level of powerful monster, the flesh and blood on their body is comparable to a spiritual herb elixir. Perhaps only Senior Yi has the ability to use the things from a top-tier powerful monster for appetizers. While Changxian the Immortal was in awe, hesitating to pick up his chopsticks, Wushuanglu beside him gently moved her nostrils and smiled, saying, "Senior Yi, I didn't expect your culinary skills to be so good as well." Changxian Yi smiled faintly and said, "Don't just stand there. Go ahead and give it a taste." Wushuanglu nodded with a smile and said casually, "No need to be too polite." She picked up a piece of pig liver with her chopsticks and gently put it into her mouth. As a piece of pig liver went down, it was quickly discovered something strange. It took a moment for her to feel the blood surging continuously inside her body. The essence of spirit in her 8 extraordinary meridians and internal organs started to operate uncontrollably. Her face instantly turned red, and sweat poured down her forehead like she had taken some kind of medicine. "Miss Lu, are you okay?" Changxian Yi looked indifferent. "This wild pepper here is unusually spicy." Just like when he first tried it, he had the same expression. However, with frequent consumption, he finds the spiciness of the wild pepper has faded quite a bit. So, when he made this dish just now, he deliberately added more. Someone like Wushuanglu, who is dedicated to cultivation, surprisingly is afraid of spicy food. Gudong. Wushuanglu nodded at Changxian Yi. Due to the strong surging of qi, blood, and essence of spirit in her body, she directly picked up the wine glass on the table and drank it all in one go. As a result, she instantly felt dizzy from the alcohol. She only felt her head heavy and muddled, and soon fell asleep with her head resting on the table. Upon hearing this, Changxian the Immortal suddenly came to his senses. Sensing Wushuanglu's essence, he shook his head with a wry smile. Whether it was this wine dish or snow spirit brew, they are not something that a mere golden elixir stage cultivator like you can handle. However, this is also a part of your fortuitous encounter and good fortune. Changxian Yi smiled at Changxian the Immortal and said, "It seems that Miss Lu really can't hold her liquor. As the saying goes, deep emotions. Bottoms up. Come on, Senior Yi, let's drink." As he spoke, he raised his glass and finished it in one go. Changxian the Immortal nodded with a smile, then also raised his head and drank it down. "Senior Yi, this is really good wine." Changxian Yi couldn't help but smack his lips. Not to mention, this wine is refreshing on the palate. After it goes down the throat, it makes the whole body feel comfortable. However, this should be a specially brewed health wine. The alcohol content is mild. He felt that he could finish the whole pot of wine himself. He probably didn't feel any tipsiness at all. At this moment, Changxian the Immortal chuckled and said, "Mr. Yi, you may not know this. The Snow Spirit wine has a strong kick to it. Even with my capacity, I can only handle up to 3 cups. Ha. It has a strong kick. How come I don't feel a thing?" Changxian Yi smiled and did not say much. He refilled Changxian the Immortal's cup. "As the saying goes, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Since you are here today, feel free to speak up if you have any matters to discuss." Changxian, he took out his personally preserved health-preserving wine. At least it could be considered a gift for their meeting. Changxian Yi had always been straightforward and not one to beat around the bush, so he decided to openly and directly address the matter. Changxian the Immortal was a bit stunned. After a moment of hesitation, he said cautiously, "Mr. Yi, since you put it that way, I won't beat around the bush anymore. To be honest, I really admire your painting the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. So he." Upon hearing this, Changxian Yi raised his glass and drank it all. Ha. Senior He indeed has a good eye. The diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity is the work I am most proud of recently. If you like it, then consider it a gift from me to you." As soon as these words were spoken, Changqian the Immortal's face immediately changed color, and his mind and spirit were greatly shaken. He quickly got up respectfully and said, "Thank you, Mr. Yi, for giving me this painting." He never expected that Senior Yi would be so generous, casually gifting him the painting filled with many fortunes, the diagram of supreme profoundness and eternal clarity. With that, he became even more convinced that the young man in front of him was indeed the esteemed grandmaster of the sacred land of metaphysics. And he was afraid that he had already seen through his own identity. Otherwise, if it were anyone else, they would never do such a thing. At this point, Changqian the Immortal felt even more admiration and respect towards Senior Yi. At this moment, Changqing poured himself another glass of wine, raised it with a smile, and said, "Come, Senior Yi. After this glass, there's another one." Changqian the Immortal did not dare to decline and directly raised his glass, finishing it in one gulp. However, after drinking the third glass, he showed no further intention of drinking. Changqing also does not have the habit of urging others to drink. Although he thought that Changqian the Immortal's words were a bit exaggerated, he had no intention of stopping. You see, by the time Changqian the Immortal finished his third glass, he had already had nearly 5 glasses. Surprisingly, he showed no signs of being drunk at all. At this point, Changqian the Immortal pondered for a moment and cautiously said, "Senior Yi, the chess game you set up on the board just now was quite profound. I wonder if you could offer some guidance." At the sound of this, Changqing Yi's eyes lit up. "Does Senior Yi also play chess?" To be honest, he is quite obsessed with chess. He has been wanting to find someone to exchange skills with. Changqian the Immortal was stunned for a moment. He smiled wryly and said, "I only know a little about it. I dare not show off my meager skills in front of Mr. Yi." Modest? This must be modesty. Hearing him say so, Changqing Yi was immediately interested. So he finished the wine in his hand, stood up, and invited, "Senior Yi, since that's the case, shall we have the next round?" Changqian the Immortal hesitated slightly, with a restrained expression, before nodding with a smile. Then the two of them sat facing each other at the chessboard. "Senior Yi, please make the first move," Changqian said. Changqian the Immortal nodded without any modesty. Then he placed a black piece on the corner of the board. Changqing Yi furrowed his brow without leaving a trace. Then he picked up a white piece and placed it next to the adjacent corner. In this way, the two of them continued to make moves. But just as Changqian the Immortal placed the ninth piece, his mind and spirit were suddenly sucked into the chessboard. At that moment, the heavens and the earth turned black and white. A terrifying pressure descended upon him overwhelmingly. Changqian the Immortal suddenly stopped making moves. Changqing Yi, who was contemplating his strategy, couldn't help but show a look of doubt. He raised his head gently. But he saw the opponent, pale as if he had seen a ghost, with veins bulging on his forehead and a fierce expression between his brows. What's going on? They've only played 9 moves. How did he suddenly become like Bing Xingyan? Thinking of this, Changqing Yi couldn't help but shake his head. A trace of disappointment quietly appeared on his face. Is it so difficult just to find someone to play chess with? However, quickly, Changqian the Immortal suddenly pulled out his mind and spirit from the chessboard. Then, he couldn't help but gasp for cold air continuously. What kind of chess game is this? It almost made his state of mind collapse. The celestial spirit shattered. Suddenly coming to his senses, he stared at the chessboard inscribed with the words, "Divine Mechanism." This chessboard contains the supremely powerful the 2 ways of yin and yang. Could it be a fake immortal artifact after all? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a strong shock in his mind and spirit. He quickly got up. "It's all my fault for not being proficient in chess. I hope you can forgive me." Changqing Yi let out a slight sigh, then smiled faintly and nodded. "But I have a chess game here. I hope Mr. Yi can help me solve it." After saying that, Changqian the Immortal took out the chessboard with the picture of 4 dragons spitting water from his arms. Changqing Yi glanced roughly and smiled. "This chess game is not difficult. Just that there are many variations for the white pieces, making it a bit difficult for the black pieces to figure out. That's why it's quite clever. At the sound of it, Chan Xian the Immortal's eyes flashed with a hint of brilliance. Mr. Yi, could you please teach me the way to crack it? Chan Qingyi smiled lightly. Back in the old days,